Hi, I'm Charlie, and this is Stereo Hysteria. Our April artist of the month, Laura Cantrell, is a singer and songwriter born in Nashville, Tennessee, and based in New York City. While attending Columbia University, she joined Bricks, a project helmed by Mac McCann before he formed Superchunk, and she also guested as a vocalist on songs by our April 2013 artist of the month, Michael Shelley, and They Might Be Giants. But when she began releasing music under her own name, she quickly garnered acclaim for her knack at connecting the dots between classic country and honky-tonk styles and more contemporary Americana, with a bit of 60s pop for good measure. For years, she shared her encyclopedic knowledge of country music on a beloved weekly show on WFMU called Radio Thrift Shop. And more recently, she's embarked on a monthly series of concerts called States of Country. She's penned liner notes for releases by Dolly Parton and Tammy Wynette, and her own albums have been championed by Elvis Costello and John Peel. Stereo Hysteria spoke with Laura via telephone last month, and we'll be hearing our conversation over the next 2 hours. But we'll begin by hearing the lead-off track from her most recent LP, 2013's No Way There From Here, called All the Girls Are Complicated.
All the girls are complicated. All the girls will work you hard and they break their hearts. It's just who they are. They're just working out who they are. All my friends are raving mad, make me so crazy, but you know I'm glad that I've got someone I can lean upon. Oh, and I know I'm not the only one. From the ones who tend their looks to the ones that mind their books, to the one who's got her hooks in you. You know she doesn't have a thing to prove. All the girls are complicated. Everyone is precious too, and you might get lucky if you do. Oh, you might get lucky if you do. Find the one that makes you laugh. Find the one that takes your breath, where you won't get everything that you want. Oh, but you'll need one to dote upon. Listen close to her, just as if your life depended. It's never just the word. Feel your way and you will mend it. All the girls are complicated. Everyone's precious too, and you might get lucky if you do. You might get lucky if you do. All the girls are complicated. All the girls will work you hard and they break their hearts. It's just who they are. Oh, they're just working out who they are.
I usually start off just by asking about your upbringing musically, like if your parents were particularly musically inclined or if you had any early formative experiences with music.
Well, I would say my parents aren't musicians and didn't play instruments. So, I didn't inherit anybody's musical talent, which might be obvious, but I come from a long line of really great music fans that I've kind of come to appreciate in the last few years as I've even watched my daughter, who's 12 now, forming her own musical taste, that my parents both are really pretty astute music listeners and had their own separate tastes. They're 10 years apart in age. They have an age difference of 10 years, and my dad's taste kind of ran to the oldies side of what he would have grown up with. So he was a teenager in the late 40s and 50s, right in the rock and roll era, but he liked stuff from the 30s and 40s himself. And he liked old country stuff and bluegrass and kind of things that were a little bit more, not part of the rock era. Whereas my mom grew up smack, like she was in the high school when the Beatles came out. So, she had that kind of flavor to her music taste. And they're both from Tennessee, from the South. So they both also were exposed to a lot of stuff that was regional. And that was something I was aware of when I was growing up. So I'm also, being from Nashville, like, you're sort of ground zero for a certain part of the country music industry. So, I grew up always knowing like who the Opry stars were, because you might not know their music, but you might actually run into them at Kroger and you might be like, who's that old dude in a cowboy hat? Oh, look, Hank Snow's, in the market today or whatever. So Nashville was a funny place in that regard because it's such a small city when I was a kid, and with a very outsized, dominant country music business with a lot of people who were legitimately artists and players and what have you. And then also a lot of folks who were aspiring to that. So, we were kind of surrounded by sort of country music nuts in that way too, which was kind of a funny thing to grow up with. And in some ways, it's probably still true. Teenagers from Nashville rebel against that also and decide that country music sucks and they have to have their own thing. And, it's kind of a funny place in that way.
Did you ever have your own rebellion of that sort?
Mild. I just was like a new wave kid and, wanted to listen more to like Nick Lowe and Elvis Costello and stuff on the radio. I mean, I wasn't super aware of punk, but there was this 80s kind of alternative culture that was just bubbling under in Nashville. So we heard about Jason and the Scorchers and people playing at Cantrell's, which was a punk club in Nashville, oddly named after my family surname. I never got to go there. And, people playing at Vanderbilt, like when the Police and the Pretenders and all these other bands came through. I saw the Clash at Vanderbilt. It was a post-Joe Strummer version of the Clash. Right. But, there was that. So I think that was what was more important to me in terms of social music with my friends. I mean, as a little kid, I really loved old music also, kind of like my dad did. Like, there were old musicals from the 30s on public television, and you would see, the stars of MGM in, a Busby Berkeley musical or something, and there'd be one song like sung by, I don't know, Dick Powell or Ruby Keeler, or, so I liked that stuff kind of secretly on my own. And also I liked old country stuff, or stuff that I thought of as old country, like Ernest Tubb and Hank Williams and Kitty Wells, those things. But I wouldn't talk to my friends about liking that. Like, that would be something that I knew was like my dad had influenced, and I hadn't claimed that as an identity yet, So I will say we lived in the neighborhood of Kitty Wells and her family. And that was something I was also aware of. Like, my dad would drive down their street and you would actually see tour bus parked in the driveway of this little ranch house. Not a small place, but, something that seemed pretty modest and unassuming for somebody who was a country music star. That, was something I was aware of too. Like, who's Kitty Wells? Why does my dad say her name every time we pass this house?
The reverence is built in there.
Yeah, it was kind of like he was sort of signaling, oh, she's culturally important to at least him and his, people he grew up with.
Here's Laura's rendition of a song Kitty Wells released in 1955 from her 2011 tribute album, Kitty Wells Dresses, called Poison in Your Heart.
Once I loved you, darling, and it thrilled me through and through. I must admit I wanted only you. Your kisses left me breathless when you said we'd never part. Your lips are sweet as honey, but there's poison in your heart. The way that you two time me is a sin and it's a shame. You even said you'd like to change my name. but there's poison in your heart.
I do remember having sort of funny conversations. My families, again, they're from two slightly different generations between my father's and my mom's side, and also different regions of the state. My dad's from West Tennessee, from a very rural area, and his family really was the growing up, like Opry listening, like that radio in their house was the main entertainment for everybody. So when Saturday night came, everybody tuned on the Opry. And by the way, they did that on Tuesday night and Wednesday night when other shows were on. They listened to, radio dramas and the hit parade and all these offerings, whether they were musical or not. But the Opry had been pretty important. He remembered being a rural radio listener, which is sort of a thing that spread the popularity of country music when those big Clear Channel stations would broadcast the barn dance shows like the Opry. So I remember kind of hearing firsthand from his family what that was like and who their favorites were. And, when I started reading about the history of it, I could kind of go, oh yeah, that's what, my grandmother, my aunts all describe loving Eddie Arnold or thinking he was just the dreamiest, because they'd hear him singing on the radio or whoever their favorites were. Whereas my mom's family were all a bit younger and grew up more in that rock and roll era. And they kind of had a little more disdain. They grew up in Chattanooga and the city. Although it's a small southern city, they still didn't consider themselves growing up in a rural place, and they liked stuff that was more urban. And, I think they might have had a little bit of a feeling also of, if you like country music, that means you're a hick. So, we're going to like stuff that's more sophisticated. But then they all just ended up being rock and roll fans anyway. So all kind of comes out in the wash.
You did attend Columbia University in New York City, which is obviously another historically very musical city, but a very different character.
Right.
What was the readjustment of that like?
Well, I came to New York just assuming there wouldn't be any country music stuff visible. And when I left Nashville, I was aware Nashville is a unique place in music history because it is this decades-long country music history based there. And it's dominated a lot by the business, but then within that sort of represents like these little strains of different, real elements of folk culture. And, the Carter family and the early country music stuff represented culture kind of being made in the moment. So I was like, well, I'm going to, go off to New York and sort of see what their version of that is. And I kind of maybe guessed that I would, because of Columbia where it was, I'd learned something about jazz and jazz history. But what was interesting when I came to New York is I hadn't ever thought about like the folk era and how many people travel through New York, going back to the very beginning of the folk era, like the late 40s with the Lomaxes and, Woody Guthrie and this whole movement of like appreciating folk artists who were from different parts of the country and them coming and playing shows for urban audiences, and how that created this fad in the early 60s of kids learning folk songs and learning folk styles of playing. And so that, I came to New York in 1985. It was just really kind of 25 years earlier that the real lucrative part of the folk boom happened in New York. And Joan Baez and Dylan and everyone else in the village folk scene were there. So there was still this kind of palpable link to that time.
Right.
And that surprised me because there was a lot of strains of country music kind of in there. There was way more bluegrass in New York. And I didn't realize, like, kind of post-folk boom, there had been a bluegrass popularity in the clubs in New York. And then that kind of hit a wall in the mid-70s and it wasn't popular anymore. But there were local people who played the music. And if you went to events like in Central Park, or, if somebody like Doc Watson played Central Park, which I maybe saw a couple times, or at Lincoln Center, it would draw this audience, and it wasn't all country people for sure. It was like an urban folk audience, and they might have seen Doc when they were teenagers. Or Bill Monroe played Carnegie Hall when I was just out of college, and I was shocked he filled up Carnegie Hall. I mean, why that, that's all sort of some naivete in my own sort of estimation of how worldwide the music was. But it was interesting seeing this, appreciation in New York. So I realized kind of early on, it's like, oh, I can kind of trace this lineage of the stuff that I'm already interested in, like back and forth through the city in different eras. And I just realized like, oh, there's actually a long history of every artist comes and plays New York at some point, even if you're looking at like Patsy Cline coming to play on Arthur Godfrey Talent Scouts, or Carl Perkins and his band on the way to play TV in New York and getting in a bad car accident and never making it. Like the New York moment is part of the history of it. So I landed in a place where I could still sort of stay connected to that. It's just sort of the urban part of the story. So, that's kind of what I focused on and became a little bit of obsessed with also, all the country artists that had come through New York, lived in New York, had different popularity there. I'm still interested in this. I have a little program we do monthly called States of Country, and we're going to do the New York show in June. And, I'm already overwhelmed. Like, there's too many things to play, but also, like, there were clubs here. Like, I was just reading about the Village Barn, which was a nightclub in the 30s and 40s. And they regularly brought people up from North Carolina and Florida and wherever to play, month-long stints for the nightclub audience. Like, and this was in the Village on pre-folk era Village. That stuff just fascinates me. I'm just like, who was coming in 1938 to see, the Rouse brothers at the Village Barn or whatever? And it just sort of makes you realize, like, New York kind of encompasses everything within it. So,
yeah, it's definitely the melting pot.
Yeah. And when I did get to know a few old timers, they would talk about, oh, yeah, so-and-so had a radio show, and he would have somebody doing country tunes, but the fiddle player was Eddie South, a famous jazz violinist who took it as a gig. That stuff fascinated me too. This kind of like, okay, we don't have a real country fiddle player, so we'll just get a guy with a violin. And, he's one of the great jazz violinists, but we'll just put him on these standard tunes and it'll be fine. Like, I love that sort of idea of it can kind of be made up as you go along. It's sort of the country is sort of an idea, and they're all going to just kind of do their own sort of version of it.
Sure. How did you end up getting involved with Mac McConn's pre-Superchunk band Bricks?
Mac and I were classmates at Columbia. I think he graduated a year behind me because he took some time to come back to North Carolina. But we were in the same arriving class as freshmen. And, I do think being a music-obsessed kid, like, you do sort of figure out who are the other folks kind of like me. And some of that was done through going to shows. And I also think sort of being from the South, like the Nashville kids figured out who the Chapel Hill kids were, who the Knoxville kids, there's a little bit of Columbia at the time was a pretty urban school. I'm sure it's somewhat different now because I'm sure that they've done some work to make their student body more diverse, but it felt a little bit like you could kind of pick out the handful of people, who weren't from the Northeast or who hadn't gone to Northeast prep schools.
Yeah, that's a different accent.
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of, got introduced. I think he lived on the same floor as some friends of mine in a different dorm. And we were like, wow, that guy has a lot of records. And he's straight edge. What the hell is that? It's very funny. Just kind of figuring out who everybody is. But I understood like records and music bands and scenes to some little degree, and that he had been part of a scene and an active, from the moment you met Mac, he was already the guy who'd already put out a single, had figured out how to press a 45, had record art, he just was like interested, and, that interest spurred him to do things, and so a lot of kids like maybe hadn't figured out how to do that yet. So, it was kind of, even though it was pre sort of Superchunk for Mac, he'd already had bands. He was it was a guy who like knew people in other bands. Like he was already kind of plugged in to like stuff happening in different places in a way that a lot of the other kind of freshmen, sophomores in college didn't know. So that's how I got to know Mac. When I eventually played with him, again, it was sort of based on like Mac was just always really game to do stuff, and he'd start this or that band just on the promise of one little gig. I actually had a little duo with him where we played, it was called Potter's Field, and we never recorded anything, but we played like frat housey coffee house, like this campus student center coffee house gigs, and enjoyed, kind of mixing up, we'd play a Louvin Brothers tune and then Gimme Danger. And then, but a folky, like not just me and him singing one guitar, like just very stripped down, very basic. So it was kind of like figuring out what you could do with the songs in that format of just two people singing and one guitar, you could kind of folkify almost anything.
Mhm.
So we had fun, figuring out a little set of songs that we felt like we could do. And so it was from that actually that Mac asked me to be in Bricks, because that was a different thing with Andrew and Josh. And I think he figured out like, okay, Laura knows like where the beat is in the song. Like, so, she'll be okay, like figuring out like how to play on the 2 and 4 on the suitcase or the box or whatever it is. So it was just all having fun. Like band practice meant going and hanging out in his apartment, and they'd have these made up songs about whatever random things that we know. I'm not sure I ever even really knew what the songs exactly were about, but there would be some lyrics and parts of the songs, and we'd have to figure out like how to make a rhythm to that stuff without using a drum or whatever. So it was all like pure, just fun to do.
Here's Bricks, with a song originally released as a 7-inch single in 1989 on Mac's then fledgling label, Merge Records, called The Girl with the Carrot Skin.
Girl with the carrot skin, she met him in, out of carrots every day equals 10. Did you ever find any ghosts up there? Blue-eyed attic dust falling.
The fact that we recorded, I mean, Mac was recording stuff on his 4-track at that point. So the record, I forget what it is, it's a microphone and a box of dirt, if that's a single. Whatever those recordings were all just done in the house. And that was also great for me to see, because I realized like playing in New York for me, like playing outside of the campus environment seemed like you had to hit this high bar. Like you had to know professional musicians and have a rehearsal space and pay people and all this stuff. And like, this was just the opposite of that. This was like, let's go play. And we're not professionals. We're just going to do this for fun, but we're still going to make something.
Right.
And I've tried to, in my grown-up life, keep a little element of that. Like, what if we just did this? You know, and it was not, because we thought it was going to seem more professionalized to do it. What if we just did this because we liked it? Like, this chord doesn't go in a country song, but what if I just like it here? Let's keep it. So I learned that lesson, I think, from Mac.
I'd also like to ask about the collaboration with They Might Be Giants on the guitar, because, I mean, that was a big single on a major label with a video and everything. How did that come to pass?
I moved to Williamsburg in the early 90s, and I met the Giants. They lived there. Williamsburg also was like kind of a little punk rock wasteland of no development, very cheap apartments, close to the city, but far away in terms of like There was no cash machine. There was no restaurant opened after 5 p.m. Like, it was just a strange place that, because it hadn't yet been seized upon by developers and people who were going to remake it from sort of an industrial kind of forgotten neighborhood into something cool and pricey and close to the city, all of which has kind of happened by now. But, there were people having like underground gigs in factory spaces. There was a lot of that DIY spirit that I remember feeling at Columbia with Mac and his crew. But it was just kind of making up stuff in this little margin of uncharted territory in Williamsburg. I'd already also gotten involved with WFMU, so I felt like I had kind of found my underground, between FMU and then bumming around with Giants and many other musicians. A lot of folks that I really admired, like Amy Allison. Amy Rigby was just transitioning from being, in the Shams to doing her own stuff on her own. That sort of grown up, but not super high pressured environment of being able to live in Williamsburg, which was super cheap. So you could kind of not have a full-time job if you didn't need to pay more than $300 a month rent in the apartment you were sharing with somebody. Then you could afford to do some artsy stuff and temp the rest of the time or whatever, which I did for a little while. So I met the Giants in that milieu. And though they had a major label deal and, had already had a hit and videos and all these things, I wasn't super familiar with their music because Columbia wasn't a big college radio scene, really. We saw the bands that came through on campus concert stuff, but there wasn't like the classic 80s college radio vibe up there.
Sure.
Because there was a jazz station for the student station and stuff. So I wasn't so familiar with the Giants music, but I recognized right away, like, some art school kids, were kind of doing the same thing that I'd been doing with Mac up at Columbia. Like, what cool thing can we do now? Oh, what's the budget? Like, they could get stuff paid for if they released it. And so that's how I ended up guesting on the guitar. Like, they were about to make a record and had a thing and saw a part where a female voice could be. I would say they tapped a lot of other folks in their neighborhood as well. Like, I think Amy Allison is guest on one of their things, and maybe some of the Silos, and of course Robin Goldwasser and some of the other kind of locals would get tapped to do kind of cool little things tucked in to their records.
Sure,
So it was a fluke in my mind that it became something they wanted to make a single of.
In the spaceship, the silver spaceship, the lion takes control. In the spaceship, the silver spaceship, the lion takes control.
Who's that playing? Hey, the guitar.
Hush, my darling, be still, my darling, the lion's on the phone. Hush, my darling, be still, my darling, the lion's on the phone.
I think John directed that video himself. So, he had some ideas, but it wasn't worked out in advance. It was very much like, show up here tomorrow with your guitar, and not a big production. We're going to have this scene here and this, and then we'll kind of make up what we're going to do in each thing, what needs to happen kind of on the spot. So there was a fair amount of improvisational energy to it. And then also, because you're on a video shoot and waiting for things to be set up and whatever, a lot of like hanging about. And I feel like there were two guys from John Spencer. In fact, John Spencer, or was it Matt Verdery? Anyway, whatever. There were just a bunch of musicians also hanging around who were like kind of like me, like got the call from John, like, show up. We're gonna do this. So it was a very, it's just kind of fun energy to that stuff. My daughter thinks now it's just hilarious. She's like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, yeah, that's a long time ago.
The music of Bricks and the They Might Be Giants song don't really hint at what your musical style would become. But when you did the EP for John Flansburgh's Hello CD of the Month, it seems like your style was very much developed into what it would become at that point.
Yeah, I had learned a few things from Mac and from the Giants. You needed original songs.
Hmm.
People don't really take you seriously unless you have something you've written that's, if you're not a great instrumentalist, like reinterpreting a style or doing something that is interesting with established songs, then you need some original stuff. So I had written a handful of things, and doing the Hello EP was my first stab at like trying to record them. And we did that in John's apartment again. Like he was totally generous with his time and gear. And, we just showed up. I can't remember all the people that played on it, but it was sort of before I had my own band, but I picked some people I'd seen doing other things. Will Rigby is on some of it. Robin Goldwasser sings on it. Obviously, she would end up singing on my first couple records.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had another band together that never recorded called the Watchbirds in the same era. So that was a great kind of first foray into seeing what these songs sounded like, recorded.
From the 1996 EP, The Hello Recordings, here's a song written by Laura called Cellar Door.
Honey, I've been knocking on your cellar door. What will I find when you swing it out right? Imagine the dark and the spark in your heart. Baby, I've been knocking on your cellar door. What will be mine when I get down inside? A 3-alarm fire, a 3-alarm fire. I've been running all over town, shaking you down, trying to bring you around. Still alive, it's been my time, but I can't wait to see what you got to show me. Well, baby, you come sit on my kitchen floor. I tell you what you will see if you're looking for me. The shine of the moon and me waiting on you. Show me. Well, baby, come sit on my kitchen floor. Tell you what you will see if you're looking for me. The shine of the moon and me waiting on you. And honey, I've been knocking on your cellar door. What will I find when you swing it out wide? Imagine the dark and spark in your heart. Imagine the dark and spark in your heart.
I still like the little Hello EP. It's got some charm to it. But I think after I finished that, and of course, all the stuff I kind of did, I was working a full-time job. I was doing a radio show. I was busy. So it kind of took me a long time to sort of get things through to finished, which unfortunately has remained a hallmark of my production style. But, after the Hello thing came out, then I realized like, I kind of need a band. I need to get a few gigs. I need to do something more regular than this very sporadic thing, and it's going to take some organization to really make that come to pass, and not just be something I do occasionally, when I don't have anything else going on. So from there, I asked Jay Sherman Godfrey and Will Rigby and Keith Christopher from the Yahoos, who's now in the Yahoos and plays with a bunch of folks. He'd been in the Georgia Satellites. He was in New York. I was like, I'll just ask these guys if they'll learn my songs and we'll do some gigs. It was like this very baby step kind of progression from, I've got a few little songs. Okay, now we've recorded them. All right, well, what are we going to do now? We should play some gigs. And it just took a few years to kind of get it organized to the point that I could just book a gig without worrying who the band was going to be. And if my regular guys weren't available, I had a second string that was, available. And this is something that playing in New York sort of requires, like, or maybe just playing regularly requires you to be at least organized enough. You might not think of it still as professional, but you've got to be organized enough that you have what it takes to walk in and do the show, So I had kind of not committed to that and maybe, felt like I wasn't super professional myself. I wasn't a great guitar player. I didn't see making like lots of money from this, but I just enjoyed it. And I felt like every time I played in public, it got easier and better to do it the next time. So it seems sort of at a certain point like logical that if you want to really get good at this, you just need to plan this into your life in a regular way and you'll enjoy it more. And I've maybe had the vaguest idea that there would be some opportunities to record an album or do something else that would be more substantial than an EP. but it still was very like small iterations of goals, not like, oh, I'm going to go win a Grammy. Like that was not the way I was thinking, but I had also probably gone through the thought process of, I'm from Nashville. I could go down there and there's lots of people that know how to play this. But it seemed like, even though I, was pretty friendly with the guys from Lamb Chop, and Jonathan Marks had been a pal of ours at Columbia, it seemed less likely to have the space to kind of develop in Nashville because it is such a smaller place with a more professionalized music scene that it would be probably pretty easy to get pigeonholed as like not really professional or good. And I just thought, that doesn't help me in any way. So I might as well stay up here. And there were plenty of other kind of local twangy bands to perform on bills with. And I, was also watching Amy Rigby, make her sort of transition into being known as a singer-songwriter and making cool records and doing gigs and starting to tour. And, all of that was really inspiring. And even though she had a label and, released things professionally and they got reviewed and all that stuff, it still seemed, because I had watched her over the years, I lived in the neighborhood and seen her, with her daughter, it seemed like I kind of could break it down in my mind and understand what she was doing as she kind of went from one stage to the next. And that was sort of an inspiring thing to be like, well, Amy's doing it, so maybe I'll get to play in Boston, or whatever. Like not just New York City gigs. Like maybe I could go play Northeast or something. There's other little scenes that have twangy bands. Maybe we could go hang out with them. So, again, that's how those goals were they were in some ways just taking little bites at the next possible thing rather than sitting back and having some master plan of how to become a professional musician.
Here's a track recorded live in June 2003 at one of my favorite venues in Chicago, Schuba's. A song written by George Usher that became the title track for Laura's debut album, called Not the Tremblin' Kind.
You can't play master, but I won't wear your chain. Throw out your dreams and tell me what you made. Shake your power in my face, leave your threats behind. Oh no, 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 I'm not the trembling kind. You are
so much.
And when you did release the debut album, Not the Tremblin' Kind, it did really take off in international settings. Like John Peel called it one of his favorite albums of all time. Were you surprised by the reaction to it?
I was definitely shocked. I had no idea ever in the world that John Peel would ever hear anything that I had made, much less like it. Should take a step back and say my friend Michael Shelley, who I knew from WFMU, had this amazing experience of putting a record out through this label in Glasgow. Mm-hmm. And he came back going, this is amazing. I mean, he'd been in bands. He'd had a single on Diesel Only. And, I'd known his music and his bands and also his radio program, obviously. But, the opportunity to go and put out music there and collaborate with other musicians in Glasgow and then play on the local BBC Radio Scotland and tour around England a bit. He came back going, it's just like this incredible boost to what you're already kind of doing in a more sort of humble, slow way in the States. And there's some element of, there's this music scene in Glasgow and they have a little bit of arts funding that they can apply for to do different things. So there was this label, Shoeshine Records, that put out Michael's stuff. And they were very interested in, it was Francis McDonald, who'd been in Teenage Fan Club as a teenager himself, and then gone back to university and done music stuff, but also been in school and then started this label to do things there. So that was Michael's experience. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. Maybe I'll try to get something like that together, not realizing that I would end up putting out a record on the same label and maybe get the same experience of getting to go over there and play and, play a couple festivals. And so that was sort of like, I was kind of making my next set of what I thought were my maybe demos for songs. I'd written Queen of the Coast and Churches and kind of had a few things that I felt like were better quality of writing than the stuff that had been on the Hello EP. So there was kind of an introduction made to Francis through Michael and also through Jay Sherman Godfrey, who produced all those recordings. But it was also very haphazard. Jay happened to be going with his wife on vacation to Scotland. Her sister was like in school there. And so they hung out in Glasgow for a night. And Jay was like, hey, you like Michael's stuff. Maybe you'd be interested in this. And he handed over a CDR of our songs. So there was this really unlikely kind of leap to, making it on to Shoeshine, and Francis deciding he wanted to start a little Americana imprint. He was in a band there called the Radio Sweethearts. He'd actually sent me Radio Sweethearts music to WFMU because he heard that there was a country show on FMU, and he had a version of 6 Days on the Road with a bagpipe solo. So it was just like, what is this weirdo Americana from the UK? Like some bagpipes on here. Let's play that. We sort of like knew just the satellite scenes, but I didn't really know Francis. The fact that that would then lead to putting out a record that would be, I didn't know when Francis proposed we make an album after he heard those first few demos. He was like, this could be a record. Just make more. Don't redo these. Just do more of them. So we were like, okay, well, we got a few more. We just put some stuff together. And of course, I didn't have a lot of written songs. So I did rely on Amy Allison, George Usher, some local writers, but I picked my favorite songs that I'd heard them all performing that I loved and that I, started to do some of them in my shows too.
From 2000's Not the Tremblin' Kind, this is Queen of the Coast.
She was the queen of the coast back in 1965, prettier than most. She could keep a room alive with the catch in her voice and the beehive on her head. Do you remember anything she ever said? Well, some stars fade faster than the rest, and the promise wore off, though she did her best. She finally looked around for something else to do. What she found was a man who needed what she knew. Have you forgotten? Have you forgiven? Tell me, are you living just a little in your past every day? Time sure has changed you. For the next 10 years she rode around on the bus. She did washing and ironing and picking up. She had a place to stand at the back of the stage. She was there every night, looking her age. She lent her voice, but she gave her heart, and I guess that must have been the hardest part. She figured out exactly what was going on, all the love she had given for a song. Then things unraveled like they usually do. She got her old heart busted up by husband number 2. Have you forgotten? Have you forgiven? Tell me, are you living just a little in your past every day? Time sure has changed you. It's walked right on by you. Does it satisfy you to have so little to say? I'm not quite sure when she got back on the bus. She's still washing and ironing and picking up. If you look all the way to the back of the stage, she's standing at her mic, looking her age. In a road stop in Reno, it's supper time. The waitress comes over with a look in her eye. She says, I saw you in Modesto almost 30 years ago, and I can still remember every song in your show. Please help me, I'm falling. Don't come home a-drinking. Well, there's a pair of swinging doors for every cowboy sweetheart tonight. Time sure has changed you. It's walked right on by you. Does it satisfy you to have so little to say?
But the fact that that would get released in Scotland, but then also like have a proper promoter who was going to plug it to the BBC, and send it to the Peel producers. And I knew of Peel, obviously, but I didn't realize how committed he was to listening to new music, and that his whole show revolved around finding stuff, and so he had this ethos of like, we're going to listen to everything that comes through the door and we're going to play what we like. And so when he liked, a couple of things from my record, it was a shock. But then the fact that he decided to play it for like a year plus pretty regularly, and he's on the radio 3 or 4 times a week, so there was an opportunity to get played on the radio once a week for a year on a big national program. That was totally unforeseen to me, and very much you just can't make this shit up. So, we couldn't have thought we're going to go after Peel. That would have been a very unlikely thing to achieve if you tried to work it. So it just really just happened. And when I met John Peel and he got to ask me, he was like, you quote Lonesome Fugitive at the beginning of Queen of the Coast. And I had that record when I lived in the States, and I knew Merle Haggard's music then. And it reminded me of when I lived in the States in that period in the 60s of like 60s country. Well, that was a reference I made for a very specific reason, because the song was about Bonnie Owens, who was married to Merle Haggard. But it was also kind of a real strong reference point for my music in general, like that sort of freewheeling 60s country that's like, it's kind of got a little poppy rock edge to it, but it's still country music. And so there was, several reasons for it to be, orchestrated that way. But John kind of understood it. He's like, I remembered that. And, it reminded me of that time. And it's the fact that it struck a chord with him of, when he briefly lived in the States and been a DJ here, again, you can't make that up. You can't have that in your marketing plan. It just happened. And then what was interesting to me, and still is an interesting facet of the longevity of Peel's influence, but I think probably every time I play a show, someone comes up and says, I first heard you on John Peel. And it's not always people from England, although it often is, but he had a lot of listeners on shortwave. I listened to him on shortwave back in the early 90s, but then also once he was on the internet, people could find him that way too. So it's a really interesting experience to get kind of sucked into the Peel world. I will say that there was also some national country programs on the BBC. Again, I was ignorant of all of this, but Bob Harris, who did these 2 or 3 different country broadcasts a week and had been doing them for many, many years. He's obviously was the host of the Old Grey Whistle Test in the 70s and had hosted Emmylou Harris, and pretty much anybody who came over who did legit country stuff had passed by Bob Harris. And the fact that he also took up the record and championed it and played it quite a bunch created an audience for me there and opportunities to come and play. So once we realized all that was happening, we were like, shoot, you can't just sit back and let that go by. So for a few years, I went to England as much as I could, and I played as, professional gigs as I could, and tried to be available for festivals and, to have kind of a regular presence there. And that, that we did do on purpose, because we realized like these are kind of rare opportunities. So if you don't chase them a bit, you're sort of leaving the potential on the table. And so we did recognize that that was something that we should try to do as much as possible, try to show up.
Here's a track written by Laura's longtime guitarist, J. Sherman Godfrey, recorded during her 4th Peel session in 2003 and released in 2016 on a compilation called Laura Cantrell at the BBC, called Wait.
I never saw it coming somehow. I never do. The last one to know that you were on to something new. Tried to say I was sorry for the things I did. Apologies fall flat. I watch my words drop dead. You're so far ahead of me. Wait, I'm coming. Wait, stop running away. I wake from a dream, not knowing it's all too real. And I watch the world go rushing by. I'm standing still. Try to catch the wave and ride it sliding down. Can't reach you away, on me it's crashing down. Reaching out to you.
always enjoyed the mixture of twangy and jangly in the guitar tones on the
Right.
records. And I think that is something that you do share with some of the early Amy Rigby records, that sort of, it's country, but it also has an almost power pop edge to it. Do you think that's something that you're consciously going for, the sort of cross-genre sound?
I didn't think about it so much as cross genre. I mean, to me, again, I was sort of reaching for like a 60s. There's this kind of sparkly, when you think of some girl group stuff, like even the Beatles, like Rubber Soul, like, there's this kind of like sweet, kind of shiny top end on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it goes well with my voice. So it kind of was a natural choice to make. And so that, was something we ended up doing. It is interesting also because I realized when we were playing so often in England, at some point, John Graboff we just decided he would bring the Rickenbacker with him. And the fans in England loved seeing the Rickenbacker come off the guitar stand. They were just like, really did mean something there that we didn't really see it in the same way here. To us, it's kind of like, ubiquitous kind of folk rock thing. There, it very specifically means early Beatles,
Right.
so it wasn't like a conscious thing when we were making the records, but once we were performing, I was like, oh, they're making a connection here that I didn't think of. But,
Right.
It's kind of a historic connection that holds some weight here. But aside from that, we're really just trying to make each song sound the best for itself. So, there has been kind of a tried over time to not just be jangly, and to have other elements of things in our recording process. But even now, I have like a jangly kind of song. I think of it as sort of a Carlene Carter vibe, but it definitely has this space in it for that guitar sound. And I think people will go, oh, that sounds like Laura Cantrell, because that's what they think
Right.
of, this kind of jangly, up-tempo, bouncy thing. So
Yeah. Elvis Costello sort of famously called your music a cross between Rubber Soul and Kitty Wells.
Yeah.
Which is, such a almost on the nose description.
I know. I still am like, that. I guess it's like side by side, because it wouldn't be Kitty Wells singing Rubber Soul. That would be hard. That'd be hard to fathom. But the presence of like those sort of ballady kind of heart songs, sung in a kind of plain way like Kitty would do, along with the bouncy, poppy stuff. I get that. So, no, it's funny. Also, my daughter is a big Beatles fan, and just yesterday she was like, Rubber Soul is so underrated. I'm like, oh, the wisdom of the 12-year-olds. So
She's not wrong.
sweet. No, she's not wrong.
Featuring John Graboff on 12-string guitar and written by Joe Flood, here's a song from 2002's When the Roses Bloom Again, called All the Same to You.
Excuse me for living. Don't mind if I do. I hope all is forgiven. I'd do the same for you. But if it's true what they say, someone must pay. I'll bear my share of pain, but I won't take all the blame if it's all the same to you. I used to like to choose my poison, but now I wouldn't dare make a choice between the water and whatever's in the air. But if it's true what they say, someone must pay. I'll bear my share of pain, but I won't take all the blame if it's all the same to you. I'd like to buy the world an aspirin and slip it in their Coke, if it would do any good. I'd try to tell the world a joke. Well, if it's true what they say, someone must pay. I'll bear my share of pain, but I won't take all the blame if it's all the same to you. Well, now they're tearing down the wall, saving every brick, just in case they want to build a new one. Can't beat it with a stick, but if I had my pick, I guess I'd want to take the blue one. Jesus, Jesus, won't you tell me how to do But if it's true what they say, someone must pay. I'll bear my share of pain, but I won't take all the blame if it's all the same to you. And if it's true what they say, someone must pay. Bear my share of pain, but I won't take all the blame if it's all the same to you.
I would like to ask about songwriting, because on a lot of your albums you do intersperse your own compositions with those of others, and for me it's very hard without looking at the liner notes to tell which is which. Part of that is because your songwriting does have that, like, a lot of them sound like they're songs that have been around for a while, but it's also you have a knack for inhabiting the songs that you do choose. Like, I remember being very surprised to learn, for example, Letters was a Lucinda Williams song.
Right.
Like, how do you decide what songs to record and, like, what balance to strike with that?
Well, that's a good, I think some of it comes from, having a DJ's ear.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm always thinking, like, what makes a good segue between this and that, and what songs sit well next to one another. So sometimes when I've written something, I'm also kind of listening for something that will pair with it
Mm-hmm.
in a show, or, when you make a recording. And, some of it's just being a song nerd too. Like, I just like to recognize songs and kind of, I don't know, there's some mental filing system that happens of what goes where.
Right.
And I haven't thought a lot about what that is. It just sort of happens naturally. But I think also I try to choose things that I can sing authentically. So for me, the song Letters, she's talking about getting her mail in New York City and taking the subway, but she also mentions New York City, California, and Nashville, Tennessee. And I thought there's not that many songs that reference all those things and places. So that to me felt like I could kind of, you say the word inhabit, but I could maybe appropriate that for me, Lucinda doesn't even sing this song, so it's not that important to her. But for me, it could sound like something, relevant to me. So that was probably the reason that I chose that song, was that it sort of had those two references to Nashville and New York in it. And hey, it's always great to have a Lucinda Williams song not associated with her, but that's still got the hallmarks of her writing, which I love, and she's a big inspiration to me.
From a 2006 EP called Humming Songs, acoustic performances from the Flowered Vine. Here's a live in-studio take of Letters.
Used to take the subway to 42nd and Broadway. Check my downtown mailbox. Check my downtown mailbox. Always felt much better when I got me a letter in my downtown mailbox. In my downtown mailbox. Send me a letter, send it to me when you want to reach me. Might be in California, New York City, or Nashville, Tennessee. Baby and I had a fight. I couldn't sleep last night. Thought he didn't want me no more. Thought he didn't want me no more. Well, I was satisfied when I went outside. Found a letter on my front door. Letter on my front door. Send me a letter, send it to me when you want to reach me. Might be in California, New York City, or Nashville, Tennessee. Early in the day, late at night, whatever you're feeling, you can always write. Send me a letter, send it to me when you want to reach me. I didn't have much money. There was not much food on the table. Not much food on the table. And I was feeling pretty low. I heard a knock at my door. It was Western Union with a cable. Western Union with a cable. Send me a letter, send it to me when you want to reach me. Might be in California, New York City, or Nashville, Tennessee. Early in the day, late at night. Whatever you're feeling, you can always write. Send me a letter, send it to me when you want to reach me. Send me a letter, send it to me when you want to reach me. Send me a letter, send it to me when you want to reach me.
So the album Humming by the Flowered Vine came out on Matador. How did that label connection happen?
Well, we had done a lot between Shoeshine and Diesel Only. Diesel Only was my husband's label. So we basically self-released Tremblin Kind and When the Roses Bloom Again here in the US, with Shoeshine, Spit and Polish doing them in the UK. And obviously had really enjoyed some success in different areas than we had anticipated. So, we got really great press. We got some great features on the radio here in the States. Obviously, we're having the Peel thing happen in the UK. So, I think after having the experience for the first two, we were thinking, wow, what would a real label actually do with this good stuff that's happening that we're kind of like trying to manage as best we can? And so we'd approached a few folks. And I think that the guys at Matador, Gerard particularly, because he'd spent some time in England, he came to see us in London. I think he sort of, the DIY part of it, he had respect for and realized like it's not that easy to create this type of recognition, without a marketing team and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I think he had a real sort of understanding that we, by accident sort of tripped over, getting a shot at, creating a recording career for me, at least in England. So, I think he was intrigued by the idea of Matador helping us do the next stage, next step. In the US, it's sort of all about getting on AAA radio, which we had not really done. We'd had great luck with All Things Considered and done a ton of stuff for NPR. But in terms of that, the big AAA stations of the world.
Getting playlisted.
Yeah, we hadn't gotten playlisted. We hadn't cracked the code. So, I think that was where Matador was like, well, if you had a little more budget that you weren't having to create yourself and help from our marketing team, maybe we could get there. So that's how we approached making Humming, was kind of like swinging for a little wider potential sonically and, make sure the songs were still good and had that, there was a charm, I think, to the song choices. And I was still like, I'm trying to write, I'm trying to grow as a writer. And I'm, but I don't want to like take a weird left turn here where everybody's going to be like, oh, she made something really dark or sad or whatever. So it was a bit of a lot of thinking went into that record. I still am really proud of it and feel like, Matador really did help me achieve something that we hadn't done on our own, but ultimately getting playlisted and all of that stuff that we were hoping for didn't really happen. So it ended up being one album for Matador. And then, at that point I was also in my mid, already past 35 and, thinking, am I going to have a kid anytime soon? I better get on that. So right at the end of the cycle of in the Humming record, we got pregnant and kind of became less active in terms of touring and
Mm-hmm.
chasing other stuff. So, but I still have a lot of fondness for the core team at Matador. I think also we were experiencing like the business was really in a total gear shift.
Mm-hmm.
And so stuff that we just counted on, like
CD
sales of physical CDs. Yeah. Like we'd sold, 10,000 plus in both the UK and the US on each of the first two.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they were counting on that happening for the next one. And it was just as like the streaming stuff was starting and,
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, Napster and other ways of getting the music. So, they were really seeing that erosion happening.
Right.
Not just with us, but it definitely meant it was a lot harder to sell those records. And it was really, if that was going to go away and the other stuff wasn't going to come through, it was like, just not going to happen, which I intellectually understood. And at the same time, from having released the records myself on the first couple, albeit with a lot of help, my husband's label and Shoeshine, but we've done a lot of things with a very long arc of activity. So we realized like we don't have the muscle to like go out there and blitz the marketplace on release day. So we'd have to do it in this slow, more organic way. You'd get this little radio thing and that would maybe help you get booked at this thing. And then being booked and coming back over meant that there was going to be another little opportunity to get press and interviews. And it just would roll out over a longer stretch of time.
Mm-hmm. And
having that, really kind of shorter window to know whether you were going to do well or not was a real sort of shock to my system. I was like, wait, how could you know in 6 weeks that this record is not going to, light the world on fire? Like there's still a lot of things we could do, but it was, a lot of other crap happened. Like we had a whole Southern tour booked going to Texas and then Katrina happened and we canceled most of it.
Right.
There was we had a tour with Lucinda Williams, which she canceled for various reasons. And that was going to be throughout Europe. So, we had like some good things teed up that in the end didn't happen. And instead of having a good rollout plan, we were like, oh, there's some holes, because stuff we worked on fell through. So, it just like was what it was.
From the 2005 album, Humming by the Flowered Vine, this is California Rose.
Your mama wasn't one to mess around with. Had a fleet of cars and all those flashy clothes. Taught you the discipline, doing what she told. Kept her fist around the money tightly closed. She had all you kids to think of, one more precious than the rest. Big brother's running wild, you learn to kick your heels in style. Did you have it worse or have it best? When you grew like a California rose, the color of your clothes blooming even as you crack and dry. You sang easy and so sweet, the dust under your feet, open your heart, natural as can be. Mama never suffered any in-laws, ran them all away eventually.
And the next full-length album that you did was Kitty Wells Dresses, the sort of tribute to Kitty Wells, who you've mentioned sort of the personal connection growing up sort of down the street. But could you talk a little about just how you've connected with her music? And I know the album came out a few years before she passed. Did she ever get a chance to hear it?
Well, I'll start with your last part of your question. She did get a chance to hear it. And in fact, Mark Nevers, who recorded the album, we recorded it in his studio, his wife, not yet wife, but his girlfriend at the time, Amanda, was working at Vanderbilt and became friendly with a woman there who ended up being one of Kitty's like nieces or something. And so she invited her over for 4th of July. When this is while we were like mixing the record. She invited her over for 4th of July, and then it was at Kitty's house. And while she was there, she had the mixes in her pocket, and she was like, if I get a chance and it's not too awkward, I'm going to tell them that this tribute is happening, and I'll see if I can give it to them. But while she was there, this is a crazy story, she realized that she was related on her father's side to the whole clan of people. So she had this crazy experience of like meeting her long lost family, and then was like, hey, by the way, I come bearing music. And so she got to play it for Kitty and Johnny, and said that Johnny was just ecstatic. Johnny Wright, Kitty Wells' husband, he really responded to it very sweetly, like just, I think you'd hear like that we tried to play it Kitty style. And I think a lot of folks in Nashville love to pay lip service to Kitty's position as like a trailblazer for women in the business. But her style had been kind of thought to be old-fashioned and not something that people emulated anymore. And so I think that was a surprise for them. And eventually I also got to go and meet them and talk to them about the record. And I think Johnny was like, it was a few months before he died, and he was pretty frail. Kitty was more alert and aware. And also, I think, and that this happened every time I met her, she was a little abashed by people's attention. She did not really like to be the center of attention, I don't think. So she was very gracious about accepting your appreciation of her, but there was sort of also a protective layer of not engaging. And I did experience that with her several times, because I'd met her, when I was in college, and again, a couple times in my 20s and 30s. So, but for me, I never thought when we were making the record that I actually didn't think we were making a record. I thought we would make something I would sell like as merch at a show. We'd done a Kitty Wells program for the Country Music Hall of Fame as a kind of one-off. And after we learned the songs, I thought, I should get Chris Scruggs in here. We should just make the recording of the songs I made these guys learn. And so we did that at Marky's studio, and I'd written Kitty Wells Dresses. And for the recording, we got Billy Contreras to come in and do the wonderful double stop style fill parts. And as we were finishing the recording, I realized, this is a lot more charming than something that we should put on the merch table, and just sell at gigs. I think maybe we should release this. So to go back to the first part of your question, it always bugged the hell out of me. Once I started really learning about country music history, again, I was a young DJ at the college station in the 80s. At that point, there were maybe like 4 or 5 women in the Country Music Hall of Fame out of like maybe 30 people.
Right.
And some of them weren't even artists. There was one that was like a business woman. Now there are several more, but still the percentage is like, I think it's less than 20% female artists recognized in that Hall of Fame, which is a part of the way the history gets told, like who's in the Hall of Fame, who are the important people. Oh, only 20% are women. It seemed very odd to me. And obviously Kitty got a lot of great opportunities and is recognized as this, first female artist thought to be like kind of a commercially legitimate artist on the same level as her male peers of her era. So she was the first female artist in country music to put out her own album, not just singles. Now, granted, that's the 50s, so long players were still sort of a relatively new thing, but, that was pretty huge. And also the first woman to headline her own concerts. And maybe the first to get banned from the Opry for a controversial song, because It Wasn't God Who Made It Honky Tonk Angels was thought to be too frank and too direct for the time.
Getting banned from the Opry is like a seal of approval.
Of course. It happened to Hank, who was her peer, so I felt like here's this crazy living legend who, by the way, part of her story is that she did this with her family. She and her husband collaborated on all this stuff. I mean, she wasn't a feminist trailblazer in the sense that she rejected, the men's help. She actually did all of this in conjunction with her husband and her family. So, which to me, in a way, was more interesting because they used a little bit of Kitty's wholesomeness for a front for them doing their business, and being successful at it. While she was being touted in fan magazines for her recipes and pictured vacuuming her house, good housemaker, they were also doing songs like, about divorce and cheating and, all this material that women hadn't been able to freely sing about before. And so I thought the combination of all those things is really interesting, and people just skip over it. It's like got this complexity to it that when you're saying, oh, the first was the queen of country music, Kitty Wells. Well, if that's all you're going to ever say about her and you're not going to remember her music and understand it and try to think about it, what it was like and what it meant in the time, then it seems kind of like sort of hollow praise to me. Right. So that was the whole point of doing the Kitty Wells record, was to sort of point all that stuff out and to think about, the breadth of her music and, what was cheeky about it, what made it edgy for the time, and then also some of the very classic things about it that are still part of the classic country music era, the harmonies, the fiddle parts, the steel parts, the template that it is. So anyway, I realize we have a lot to talk about, so that's it in a nutshell. Like, it's kind of my plea for like reconsidering Kitty as more than the old-fashioned singer that everybody goes, oh, she wore gingham, and that's it. So
Co-written by Laura and Amy Allison, here's the title track from 2011's Kitty Wells Dresses.
Kitty Wells dresses, modest and sweet, gingham and ribbon, tied up so neat. They weren't made of satin or silk from Paris, but everyone knows they were robes of the Queen. Kitty Wells dresses, every girl's dream, from 5 and dime fabric, robes of the Queen. Oh, Martha Carson and Mother Maybelle, June and Anita, and Helen as well, strode into the spotlight, a song on their lips, those petticoats swaying all around their hips. They left the crowd standing, oh, they did it with ease, in their Kitty Wells dresses, robes of the Queen. Kitty Wells dresses, robes of the Queen, from Mobile to Memphis, every girl's dream. Out in East Nashville, little sewing room, the featherweight humming from morning till noon. Radio on the counter, playing making believe, making Kitty Wells dresses, robes of the Queen. Kitty Wells dresses, robes of the Queen, a modern day woman, no fashion dream. I've seen the photo in black gabardine, high heels and a handbag, robes of the queen.
So for the next album of your first album of original material since 2005, No Way There From Here, you returned to Nashville to record. Was it all sort of local Nashville musicians for that record?
Yeah, I had, in making the Kitty Wells record with Mark Nevers at his studio, Beach House, he'd recorded all the Lamb Chop records. He'd worked a bit with Yola Tango. He'd worked with the Bobby Bear and Charlie Louvin records. I think Charlie's was nominated for a Grammy. And also with Bonnie Prince Billy and Andrew Bird. Like, he had a unique for Nashville, like, slate of indie people he'd worked with and retro country folks. He'd done both. And this is so ironic, but while I was down working on No Way There From Here, oddly, Cheetah Chrome was running a label in Nashville and elbowing me out of the studio. And I was like, Nevers, am I going to have to arm wrestle Cheetah Chrome for you to not keep giving my studio time to some people he's working with? Are we going to have to get, down and dirty about it? But I had loved making the Kitty Wells record there. And I thought that, there's a uniqueness of Nashville where it's very laid back. You can kind of check on some people if they're around, but if you realize on the day of recording that you need an extra percussionist, there's 3 or 4 people you call. One of them's usually not working. They stop by in the afternoon. It's almost like cooking a certain way. Like, you kind of know most of what you're doing, and then you're going to add this, certain things in what's fresh, what's available. So I wanted to go about that, record in the same way as we had Kitty Wells, but I knew it was my original tunes. And there were some things I wanted to try. I'd said to Nevers, I wouldn't be working with my normal band, with the exception of Mark Spencer, who came down and worked on a few of the tracks. We played around with the rhythm section, with the feel of certain tunes. He had a couple of percussion people he'd worked with that came in after the fact. So stuff like Driving Down Your Street, there's all this percussion stuff there that wasn't part of the way the song was tracked. And I was really just trying to keep this sort of open-mindedness about what we could do in the studio and a kind of sense of play about it. And at the same time, I knew Mark is not ever going to come up with something that doesn't sound good. All of his records have a beautiful, the acoustic instruments all sound great. And he knows how to record stuff that sounds country and stuff that doesn't. So, like, I knew we would have a mix of both on there. And so it was a real joy to work on that record at that studio. Unfortunately, he's moved off. I mean, I think it's good for his family. He's moved to South Carolina, but the Beach House studio kind of fell prey to Nashville development. His neighbors all sold their houses and were replaced by these mushrooming new developments all around him. And I think he realized, like, I'm not going to be able to make records here if there's like jackhammers going and construction 24/7. So he got out. But I love that we got to do that whole process there. It was a really great place to work.
From 2013's No Way There From Here, this is Driving Down Your Street.
I wish that I were driving down your street. I wish that I were driving down your street, with a tree shaking in the summer clothes and my heart out on the breeze. I wish that I were driving down your street. I wish that I were walking through your door. I wish that I were walking through your door. There's a light up on the landing and I'm barefoot across your floor. I wish that I were walking through your door. Trailer coming, can you feel it? Just over yonder, I can hear it just now. Trailer coming, can you feel it? Just over yonder, I can hear it just now. Oh, I wish that we were talking face to face. Yes, I wish that we were talking face to face. There's a chain around your neck, my heart's caught up on that chain. I wish that we were talking face to face.
worked with a lot of co-songwriters on that album, like Franklin Bruno and Tracy Ann Campbell and Amy Allison. What's your sort of process of collaborating with people? Is it sort of taking already started songs, or do you do a lot of songwriting from scratch with others?
It's a bit of both. I would say I'm a great starting person for songs. And sometimes the reality of like post-mom, life is that I don't have time sometimes to finish an idea, or I'll get something started and think, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to clear my brain enough to really start from scratch again with this song to finish it. And so I definitely reached out. Amy Allison, had co-written Kitty Wells Dresses with me. And that was, Amy's a great sort of song technician. And so I walked into her and saying, I need a bridge for the song. What do you think? And so she's great at picking things up and looking at them from kind of a technical way. I loved writing with Franklin because he plays piano as well as guitar, but we considered some things on the keyboard instead of, on just guitar based. And that opened up different chord changes and moves than I would have come up with on the guitar by myself. Right. It just also happens that Franklin is my neighbor in Jackson Heights, and I met him. I knew of his music and then realized we were neighbors, as I was working on those songs. And I was like, Franklin, come over. Let's have coffee and we'll work on some stuff. So I think in all of the cases, except for Tracy Ann, the initial song ideas were something I had already that I was trying to kind of refine. In the case with Tracy Ann, she sent me a fragment for a song. When I listened to it, I was like, gosh, that's 2 parts, like a chorus and a verse already. And all I really did was have to kind of think about it enough to get in the frame of mind to write what would feel like a next possible verse. And then once I did, I was like, wow, that actually turned out better than I thought it would. It doesn't seem like 2 parts of a song that are stuck together, So, I've used co-writing as a way to just stay active with the reality of my time and attention span. Again, like being a busy person in the city with a kid in school and a day job and all those things, like having the opportunity to co-write kind of makes certain creative stuff possible. I think also, I actually started doing this back before we were recording No Way There From Here. I was in a song club. And in fact, Franklin and I, when we were working on Someday Sparrow and No Way There From Here, both of those things were done in the song club. It was called the Radio Free Song Club, and it was with Dave Schramm and Kate Jacobs and David Mansfield, a bunch of great folks. It was a monthly get-together where you just had to bring the most recent song you finished. And so having a deadline and something to kind of make me finish songs, even if it was just as artificial as like, hey, you have to go play them for these other people, meant that as I finished things that had been lingering around for a while, I was able to pick up and begin and end things as well, like on my own more rapidly than I had previously. So I can't remember what else. I think Driving Down Your Street and Letter She Sent, Barely Said a Thing are all things that I wrote on my own in that same period. But it was a real busy period because I was able to sort of clear the decks of some stuff that had been around and then let new things, just imaginatively and musically kind of come in.
Here's a lovely song co-written by Laura and Franklin Bruno from the 2014 EP Live from Austin called Someday Sparrow.
Someday, sparrow, you're gonna fly away. Someday, sparrow, you're gonna fly away. Little sparrow is gonna fly away. Mighty sparrow, you're gonna fly away. Paid a visit by the mystery. My door was darkened with a misery. Gathered up in the adversity. I long to see you with your heart set free. Someday, sparrow, you're gonna fly away. Someday, sparrow, you're gonna fly away. Little sparrow is gonna fly away. Mighty sparrow, you're gonna fly asked to share his load. He said it wasn't mine to bear, but he knew a song that we could share. Shake the rain off of your wings, take to the sky of your dreams. Someday, Sparrow, you're gonna fly away. Someday, Sparrow, you're gonna fly away. Little Sparrow is gonna fly away. Mighty Sparrow, you're gonna fly away.
The most recent song of yours that I've seen, last year you released the AWM Bless video. Certainly the Kitty Wells Dresses album and like a song like All the Girls Are Complicated are sort of implicitly political, but this is the first sort of explicitly political thing that you've written. What was the process behind writing that song and saying something topical that's also, not linked to one moment?
Right. I think I had been thinking for a while about how to write something in my own music that would sort of show my own kind of personal reaction to things that seem to be happening in the country, or even just attitudes that people have about what's an appropriate way to express yourself, or Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, like what's racist, what's not. And I just felt like this frustration, which I think a lot of people are walking around with, whether you're an artist or not. You're walking around with an awareness that this is a very tense moment in our country. And then the Kavanaugh hearings happened, and I was watching those. I remember I was living in Williamsburg and temping, and I was home. I didn't have a temp job the week of the Anita Hill hearings.
Right.
And I watched most of those on TV. I remember at the time thinking something like, it's shameful how, like, a woman can't just say this happened and be believed or have any kind of threshold of belief. It's like, unless you have something to like this level of proof that's like in a court case with, documentation and witnesses, then we're just going to assume it didn't happen. And there's some reason that you would do this that's either politically motivated or for, I don't know, some whack personal desire for attention or something, all of which seemed like BS as far as Anita Hill went. She clearly didn't gain anything. And the fact that the sort of establishment view could be that she's political and she's trying to do this hit job, it just seemed like, no, I don't think so. And then when this happened again with the Kavanaugh hearings and just it really wasn't so much about Kavanaugh himself, although there's a little, obviously some of the lyrics are about him and about the just umbrage of white male privilege, like, his fury over being questioned, I understand being upset, but like the way he spoke to the female senators, it just seemed like you're exactly displaying what people are complaining about in a way. And at the same time, the total acceptance of it by the other mostly elderly white men on the panel. So it's about all of those things, but also about, the calling women who would be very understandably angry about the amount of privilege and dismissiveness about their point of view versus a white man of the otherwise same background and same standing in the community, calling that anger unrighteous or it reminded me of people who say, political protest is not valid because it's acting out of anger. And I wanted to connect the dots between political protests that weren't just about sex or race. And so in the video itself, like, it doesn't actually say that in the lyrics. It's more about there is a, kind of references to Charlottesville in a veiled way, and in talking about the Brother to a Dragonfly, the Will Campbell, the minister who has a beautiful book, Brother to a Dragonfly, about his process of, like, he was a minister, Southern preacher who supported the civil rights movement, but then also made the point that, there's not a good side and a bad side necessarily. You do have to love everyone. Like, that is what Christianity is, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we don't have to talk about all those big issues, but just like in the moment, I mean, I've heard in my own family here in the Northeast, like, oh, those stupid Southerners. I'm like, well, it's not that cut and dried. Like, we have to be able to hear each other and in some ways both call each other out, but still embrace the other person's experience and right to tell their own story. So anyway, that's what ended up being. But the process of writing that was very difficult. Like, I woke up one morning with some lines about working his tail off and I was like, what is this even? Like, is it about Kavanaugh? And then I was like, when I wrote the angry white man part, I was like, okay, that's pretty big. Like, does that make my skin crawl to hear somebody sing that? Like, there's nothing subtle about it. Yeah. And I tend to be more subtle, or try to be, especially with political stuff. My family, like a lot of families, has a wide range of viewpoints. And there's everybody from communists to NRA active members who they just see the world differently. So how do we all try to recognize each other? I'm not sure the song really addresses that so directly until the very end, but my point of, like, progress was made in this country by people protesting for their rights, whether it was the suffragettes in the late 19th, early 20th century, getting the women the right to vote, or the civil rights movement, or even like there's a little clip in the video of the pre-Depression, the veterans riots after World War I, where the veterans were basically starving, and the government actually turned the guns on the veterans who were encamped in DC. A lot of this history people don't, when you boil it down to, like, what's on cable news or whatever, a lot of the nuances of this history are lost. That it's not just people of color who protested, or people of some difference to what we think of as mainstream society. Sometimes there's been just poor people. And so, I was trying to kind of sum all that up, and the song and the video together seemed like a way to try to do that.
Yeah. Trying to find good political music is very hard because a lot of times it is kind of knee-jerk and just angry. So, I mean, just thank you for writing a song that has that nuance and a little bit of maybe grace. And I think that invoking Mavis Staples definitely brought it home. Like, she's a good model for being political and also recognizing humanity.
Right. Thank you. I've thought, like, I haven't played in Nashville since I wrote that song. Would I sing it there? I've barely performed it. I mean, I think making the video and posting it online, like, it was very interesting. Like, half of my family in Tennessee, who usually like every little blip of thing that I put on social media, it was like crickets, Definitely no likes from the aunties in West Tennessee on that one. But that has to all be okay. I will say the song did inspire I happened to be in Nashville on election day on the midterms. I was in Nashville that week doing songwriting stuff. So I spent the entire week arguing with my dad about, not so much that I wrote the song, but about what the point of view is that is not represented on Fox News, of just why people would be angry about what happened in that scenario, who aren't necessarily having, like, big political agendas of trying to defeat everything of the right. It's everything's so polarized. It's like, it's not all power struggle, but it was interesting having that long conversation with him. He's in his early 80s, and we both managed to hear each other out. And I think if I hadn't written the song and been explaining myself, I might not have even brought it up with him. So it was healthy, there was, and, I think sometimes we're too afraid or lazy to kind of let people know what we really think or feel. And, in this case, I had to really, like, let him know. I think he would have been happy at a certain point not knowing anymore. And I was like, we're talking about this some more. So, but anyway, it was as much a personal expression as anything else. The song, I had to get it off my chest, and whether I can have any more of that urge will be interesting to see, and other kind of song ideas of mine. But it definitely kind of satisfied something that I felt like I hadn't been as open about. So anyway.
As released late last year on Laura's YouTube channel, this is AWM Bless.
He worked his tail off in 1982, lifting weights, playing football at that fancy prep school. And with every advantage, he humbly rose to the top. Though he never touched a woman, he liked his barley and his hops. Angry wine man, you'd have me believe you're beset and besieged. Your reputation is agreed. You climb your way up to the tallest high chair. Do you feel safer up there? I see you're loaded for bear. Angry wine man, easiest part is saying bless your heart, bless your heart. Some people say Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and a woman's right to vote is one that Congress made. And both things are true, but the picture's not complete till you color in the people lying in the streets, not asking for permission, favor or a loan. Lord, they just hit the point home. Their humanity's their own. Angry wine man, you'd have me believe you're beset and besieged. Your reputation is agreed. You climb your way up to the tallest high chair. Do you feel safer up there? I see you're loaded for bear. Angry wine man, my favorite part is saying bless your heart, bless your heart. I read a book one time about a minister from the South. He marched with King at Selma, and that righteousness he didn't doubt. And he'd remind the people who came to hear him preach, salvation's not just for one side, it's not just meant for you and me. So he'd pray with the bigot, and he'd pray for the KKK. And I wonder sometimes where Brother Campbell's praying today. Angry wine man, you'd have us believe you're beset and besieged. Your reputation is agreed. You climb yourselves up to the tallest high chair. Do you feel safer up there? See you're loaded for bear. Are my roots showing? I'm angry too. That is what we have in common. I'm exactly like you. But on further reflection, I've come to believe some days the pain and the fear get the better of me. I've failed to mention of great importance are all the angry women and all the rowdy friends. You can't hold them down, you can't cover their mouths, no, you can't drown them out, never gonna drown them out. I have faith they will lift up this prayer just like Mavis did when she said she'd take us there. Angry wine man, I'll do my part. I bless your heart, would you bless my heart? Bless your heart. Bless your heart. Bless your
And that's just about all the time we have for this week's episode. I'd like to thank Laura for being so generous with her time. Any listeners in the New York City area can see Laura on the last Wednesday of each month at Sid Gold's Request Room, where she performs a show of country songs from different regions of America called States of Country. More information can be found at her official website, lauracantrell.com. Be sure to tune in again next week when our topic will be songs about ideas. But before we go, we'll hear one more stunning performance from the Laura Cantrell at the BBC record of a song written by Laura and J. Sherman Godfrey called Bees. This is Charlie, signing off.
See the sign of the old hotel. We used to stay there, empty and threadbare, water running cold. Search the streets for old friends, met only strangers, none who remember, none who would take me home. I miss the bees, I miss the honey, I miss them humming by the flowered vine. My time is short now, I feel it coming. I'll see you, darling, in morning light. Spend an hour in the waiting room of our old headquarters. None brought my orders, I rode on alone, with my portrait missing from their hall of honor. No frame to claim me, silver, black, and gold. Lost in the afternoon, missing an hour or two. Turn the crystal set, it's never failed me yet. No voice to say goodbye, tears on my face are dry. I'll be coming through on that wavelength the heart can tune. I miss the bees, I miss the honey, I miss them humming by the flowered vine. My time is short now, I feel it coming. I'll see you, darling, in morning light. voice to say goodbye. Tears on my face have dried. I'll be coming through on that wavelength the heart can tune. I miss the bees, I miss the honey, I miss them humming by the flowered vine. My time is short now, I see it coming. I'll meet you, darling, on the other side.